Hey everybody, this is Barry with Growing Roots Farm. I got Mike here from Seeds and Arrow Frontier.
Hello.
And basically, I want to get into bees, and we've talked about this probably going back a year or so ago. We've talked about it intermittently. Mike's been doing bees for a while. I'm a complete novice. I've had interest in them, getting them on our farm, on our property for a while for a bunch of different reasons. But I got started with this beehive, and it came in a kit, and Mike's going to help me just kind of learn what in the world I'm supposed to do.
Oh, absolutely. So that's the one thing great about getting into bees. Once you travel down that rabbit hole, you find out there's so many more things that the bees are useful for, and an intricate part of their lives actually is helping us. And so it's great that Barry wants to get out here. And even though one of the good things about the bees is they can actually produce honey, and that's something that if you get into it, you know, one, it's going to pollinate your plants, and then two, obviously getting the honey is a great way to get into that. So, but you got to understand first how the bees are behaving, and understand why we do certain things. Langstroth actually created the Langstroth box, and there's a lot of methods, science methods, that I had to learn the hard way. I didn't really have anybody explaining to me why the boxes were made a specific way. And once you get into the science behind it, you understand the details behind that. And so what we're basically, I'm just going to go in through and then just show Barry some introduction and beginning things. But also, if you're looking at getting into bees, then this would also be great for you. So right now we're over at Barry's house and in his woodworking shop, and then later on we're probably going to be getting into making swarm traps so we can catch freebies. The free bee?
Free sounds great.
Yeah, definitely.
So, when you're doing homesteading or starting small farm, you know, this kind of living, I feel like the majority of us that we want to go cheap. We're not cheap. We want to do quality work, but we're always looking for what's the best price.
Exactly.
And free bees sounds great.
So explain. So I did give Barry just a couple of areas to go through, and some beginning stuff that he would probably look at the best bang for his buck. And they have these sites online that you can go into, and it basically will break down like a whole beekeeping setup, you know, just to get you started. And so you went to, I guess, Maybe?
Yeah, this one, Maybe, I think it was all on a kit off of Amazon, but it had all this together with it. So, and once again, like you kind of gave the advice, like, you know, go with one of these kits, and it's like, all right, let's get started with it and figure everything out from there.
And so basically this kit came with, so your veil.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's very important, and we'll put that off to the side here. So this is actually a frame holder. And so what happens is, like, when you're getting into the bees, you can set this like right in the side. Yeah, go ahead and do that. We'll show them how it works. So you're going to break open the beehive, and so you have like your top cover, and then you're going to have what comes with the kit is your this is the queen excluder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you have your frames in here. Now the frames, they serve several purposes, but basically what the bees are going to do is draw out their comb. So when you get a swarm, most of the time they come ready to draw out comb. And so if you have these right here, and I'm just going to show this real quick.
And is that the large? Because I know there's different.
These are the large frames.
That's a large frame.
So you want to get over there and make sure that
it's good. Yeah, it should be good.
So they actually have like little honeycomb rivets down here, And what happens is the bees will actually start to build on top of that and then build their comb. And so what that does is it creates, when you start to put these into like your spinner, I've done it both ways. I've done free, comb to where the bees just draw it out, and then I've actually done this. This actually gives it the comb more support, and you'll realize that once the honey is inside these frames, these can weigh up to 10, 15 pounds. So that's a lot of weight, and if the comb is not securely fastened to the top and then on the sides, then that comb will just basically spin out with the honey. So it becomes a little bit of a mess. But I found out that these plastic boards are a lot better to be able to do that. And so this box right here, this is what you would call a deep box. And back to this right here. So this will just basically slide down on the side of the box. And then when you have your frame, you have like all your frames right here. Well, you want to take out a frame to look at the bees, see what's going on in your hive. And then you're like, okay, I'm done looking at that frame. You can just basically bring this over here and just hangs right on the side of the box. Okay, so that way, as you're going through, what I like to do is you'll put this one first, because you don't like to, you don't want somebody coming in and moving your furniture around in your home to like different places that you don't want. The bees know everything where they want stuff. They usually will have their honey frames on the outside of the box. And then as you go inwards, you're going to have your brood or your baby bees that are on the inside. Now they do that on purpose because the honey actually creates a insulation wall for heat, but then also keeps it cool in the summer hot days. So as you're bringing them out, you can kind of just bring a couple over, and then you just slide these over, and then when you're done, you put it back the same way. Okay, so then you're going to basically put this one back in here ever so gently, and voila, the last one. So this is really great for just being able to hold on to the side right there, so you have something. When I first started out, I was kind of like leaning frames up against the bee boxes or against the hive stand, and then sometimes you get kind of in a where you're doing multiple things at once, and you start kicking over frames, and then bees are flying everywhere. So that's good. Next, you're going to have, this is a great tool, and people have come up with different ways of doing things. They say you can spray sugar water on them, and that can work on certain specific things. The problem is that during honey flow, you don't want to contaminate your honey with sugar water. Okay, so people are kind of like, oh yeah, I'm going to spray sugar water on them, and they're going to be busy cleaning themselves off. But then what they actually are doing is they're actually absorbing that sugar water, and then it goes right down into the honeycomb frames. You don't want that if you're like wanting pure honey for yourself or to be selling. Smoke is obviously, the better way, and what that actually does is obviously it makes them think that there's a fire, and then so what they end up doing is they'll gorge themselves with honey in for a quick escape. If the hive is caught on fire, then they're just going to basically leave the hive with that honey, just to be able to start over, and then if the queen leaves, then she can have the rest of the bees, she lets off a pheromone that the rest of the bees will follow out with her. Now, if it's just a quick burst of smoke, they're just going to gorge themselves, and then they're kind of waiting for command to figure out what's going on. So you're not going to completely have them swarm out on you. Okay.
And does the smoke also help with some of their communicating?
Yes, it does.
It decreases their communication, so that if any of them are wanting to swarm, it's not sending the signal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's kind of the the way I
Well,
was interpreting it.
Well, it kind of clouds, not necessarily to swarm, but to say if there's a predator, they're more concerned about the smoke versus what the predator's doing.
Okay. Okay.
So they're not focused on you as much.
And I don't want to focus on it.
So
I don't like being stung. So.
exactly. So this is kind of go into this a little bit as we're going with the bees. So this is good to, if you need to look at a frame of bees, you're going to have like, you know, basically thousands of bees on each of the frames. Any hive, like a single brood hive, you can get up to, you know, 10, 15, 20,000 bees, 30,000 bees in this box. When you start adding more boxes on top of that, you can get up to about 60 to 80,000, even some of them, some of the bigger colonies, I mean, you can get up to 100,000 bees.
So where I was saying, off camera, I was saying I wanted enough bees to learn, but not be overwhelmed, especially first year.
Right.
So one of my questions for you is, I'm starting with this. When I look online, there's a lot of them where you got the large down here, and then a lot of them will have like a medium on top.
Yeah, I got some of this right here, which we're going to be putting together later.
Okay.
But just to kind of show you, so this would actually be.
It would go on top, so there'd be another one that stacks on.
Yep, and then that would just kind of go like this.
Would it be a good recommendation to have like the large and then a medium? Would that be sufficient, or do I need to get another one or two of these?
So that is like everybody's preference, and the bees really could care less about what weight, because I know some people that do all mediums, and that when I first thought about it, I was like, hey, all mediums, that's the way I'm gonna go, is like to do all mediums, and then so that way they can just, you know, use the medium frames. I'll have just all medium frames, and then it'll strictly be that they'll have some frames that are for the brood and then some frames for the honey, and then the medium boxes are lighter, so you're not carrying. So if this is full of honey, you got 10 frames full of honey, that could, and you're talking about 10 pounds per frame plus the box, you're probably looking at about 120 pounds lifting this up every time. And so if you get into it to where you're having, you know, 10, 15, or even 20, 30 hives, my goal would be to get, I think for me, ideally, I would like to see about 20, 30 hives.
Yeah.
And that would be something that would sustain yourself and then actually give you a decent amount of honey to be able to get. But you're talking about, you could have one colony, one queen that is sustaining the brood, and what I prefer to do is a single box method. But going back to the box question, you could do all mediums, you could do all deeps, and that's basically what I learned from myself, is to do, I got some 10 frames, but I'll usually do like all deeps, and I actually steered away from a lot of the mediums. Now I do have medium boxes, but what happens is like when you get into this, you're basically mixing and matching different boxes. And what I found out was when I got my first colony, it's in a nuke, and which is basically like a 5-frame. It's like a 5-frame box.
Yeah.
Well, the nukes all come with deep frames. So then that didn't work in with my medium frame box.
Okay.
So then I was like, well, now I got to create a medium or a deep box to put my
So you shifted
deep frames in. So
based
I shifted off of that.
Gotcha.
And so it seems like predominantly the deep frames is what the majority of the people use.
Okay.
And then I ended up buying a box of bees off of a lady that was getting rid of some of him, and they were all deep boxes.
So is deep also synonymous with the large? So
Yes.
the large and the deep are the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have like your large or your deep boxes, which this is roughly about I think it's like 11.5 inches, and then your mediums, which is this right here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see the difference between those, and then and then this is just a little bit lighter. So if this is full of honey, you're running about maybe 60 pounds.
Yeah.
Versus the 100 pounds or 120 pounds. So, so then this obviously is horsehair brush, and so if you go to extract honey, you got to basically shake the bees off, and they have a pretty tough exoskeleton. So, you're not going to really hurt them by shaking them off, but you shake them off, and then you're going to have a couple of stragglers that are still trying to get to the honey, and you can just use this to kind of lightly brush them off. And I mean, you can feel that.
Yeah.
It's just
really soft.
Really soft. So got that, and then you're gonna have your hive tools. Usually, let me see here. Did it come with a couple of different ones? Yeah, you got the multi-tool. So you got different hive tools, and it's just basically, it's basically your preference, however you want to handle it. I actually prefer this J hook. This is called the J hook for obvious reason. But I like the flat part of this one right here. So my ideal hive tool would be to have this to where it's flat. And I'll explain that here in a second. But then to have this J hook, because sometimes, so what you're going to have is the bees will actually basically lock these down into place. And then so they will have their that's slipping my mind right now, but their bee glue, which is different tree saps that will lock these down into place. Now what happens is like you really even during the hotter months, it's going to be hard to pull this up, so you're going to use this J hook on the end right here, and it's basically by design to basically come down, and then you're going to use the leverage from the other frame.
Let me get a close up on that.
So you're going to bring it in here, you bring this down, you're going to use the leverage from the other frame to pull that side up.
Yeah, okay.
So, and then this is what I was coming in for the science. Something else I'll show you here. You can see how this is kind of grooved to slant up. It's not just flush.
Yeah.
And then that helps to break the seal, because if it's all flat, this is the mistake that I made. I was like, I'm just going to make my own frames, and it's all flat. And when you come in here to try to break that, seal from the box, it takes a lot more effort.
It's more surface area.
Exactly, that they actually glue down. So, and then you got to worry about that. And then that basically you'll start to dent in these other frames.
Yeah.
So
that's why I told you initially, because I do woodworking. I was like, I want to build my own.
Right.
I like the satisfaction of building my own, especially from lumber I mill myself and things of that nature. But when I got this kit, I was like, maybe I won't mill my, maybe I won't do my, at least not initially. I was like, I think I'm just going to order more from here, because there's a lot of intricacies to it.
You can see this right here. Here's another key thing, just like through here. So these give you the proper bee spacing, because if you have too much spacing, if it's too open, then the bees will build bridges from comb to comb. So this is science, from Langstroth or whoever did the first hive, that he decided that was the perfect amount of space for the bees to basically travel from comb to comb without bridging over and building new comb. And so you can also see right here on the side that there's an opening, and that gives, so again, that these they will glue these together right here, but it's not going to be glued together down here. So they'll keep that space open to where it's just like when you break that seal, all you're having to do is break it apart up here. And that was another thing that I learned the hard way.
So yeah, after getting the kit and assembling it, I was like, yes, I can make all this. But I thought time-wise, it's not the most efficient.
Exactly.
I was like,
unless you're going to be doing a lot at once.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's better I just purchase it already as a kit instead of spending time doing it, because there is more intricacies to it than I initially thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's basically when I got into it. It was more so You know, oh yeah, I'm gonna get some bees and like throw them together, and you know they'll just be out on the property and they're gonna be happy. I'll be happy, and I'll get some honey out of it.
Yeah.
And you find out it's so much more in depth.
Yeah, and that's what I keep hearing is like, okay, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to learn. And that's why I'm like, I just want to get some to get started and hopefully not kill them,
Right.
and produce some honey. But that's the goal. So
The other thing that you have in for this one right here, this hive tool, it has an L right here. This is just basically that you can just kind of, you know, put it in here, separate it like that, and that will kind of like break it apart and then break the sides, and then you can use this. Now the problem though is that the initial, when you have boxes on boxes, they glue everything together. And propolis, that's what I was looking for. So the propolis is basically what they use to glue everything together. Now the propolis also has been found to have like maple sap, different tree saps from the area, and you can actually put that into an alcohol and like a vodka or something like that, and that will actually extract out the propolis properties that are high in antioxidants and actually have been known to cure some cancers.
Huh.
So
well,
everything about the bees.
That was a whole nother. That's a whole nother topic on the medicinal
exactly
part of
Yep.
beekeeping. Because I've also heard another beekeeper was telling me, at least from what I've heard, was that there's been some research on, I think it was osteoarthritis, and
Yes.
how beekeepers have a lower risk of osteoarthritis, and they think it has something to do with being stung, but some of the benefits of that actually helps your body fight off arthritis.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And they're actually using that now. Like some of the doctors are actually using that now to actually specifically intentionally have the bees, the honeybees, sting their patients wherever they have arthritis in their hands, and like people that can't even walk, and they're stinging them in their knees, and within a matter of, you know, I don't know if it's like an hour or something like that, that they can actually get up and actually stand up and walk.
That's
and
pretty
so
cool.
So different things with the bees that I feel like God just basically put them here on earth for us.
Oh yeah.
And you know, but it's fascinating to see all the things that you can use them for. So back to the hive tools. So obviously you have the flat bar right here. This one's good for getting in here and actually breaking the boxes apart. But then you come over here, and for the J hook, you know, you really got to get in here, and then you're going to pull this up by yourself, or bring it up this way, which sometimes that can damage the comb. So that's why I like the J hook on here.
Okay.
But then also for the flatness, you're talking about you don't get much lever from this one, or leverage from this one to break open the boxes.
Yeah, to break the box off.
So that's why I like this one right here. Now another trick, these are all metal, so another trick that I learned from another beekeeper was to put a magnet in your pocket, because that's the one thing, you can never have enough hive tools, and I learned that you're always going to lose them. So if you put a magnet in your pocket, then it'll just stick to the outside of your pocket. So when you need it, I feel
like I need like a tool belt.
Yeah, you almost do. Yeah. So, but
I got some old tool belts.
Those are good.
We'll just have to like put them to good use.
Exactly. So this is going to be the novice, basically the novice sugar feeder that you're going to feed the bees. Now, there's so many different things that you have one hive.
Yeah.
This is not going to be that bad to use. Okay. And then they even have. So this is one for like a mason jar. Which,
that's what it looked like, a mason jar.
Yeah, you got plenty of mason jars. Just fill up with sugar water and just screw it on there. And you'll see them, so be able to drink that down. You have one hive, this is not bad. If you get into where you're going to have multiple hives, the stronger hives will take over the younger, or the weaker hives, and will come in, and that will actually create what's called a robbing situation, to where they will find any sources of honey or sugar water, and they will steal that from the other hives, and it'll also, and then in the process they basically attack the other hive, and they'll try to find that queen and kill her, and then basically take all their resources for their hive. So one hive is not bad, but you get more hives in the same area, and then like I'm saying, it's like 20 or 30 hives, then these can become a very hazardous situation for the bees. Now this is another one for a bottle. You just fill up like a Coke bottle.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then
Here.
and then just slide that. You just slide that right into the entrance down here.
Like that there.
So, which brings me to another point. I've seen this on a lot of. I'm on like a beekeeping for beginners site, and I try to give out some advice. But I see this a lot. So this is your entrance reducer, and so for different times of the year, you want to have this to where they have a smaller entrance in the winter time. When it's cold, you don't want a lot of their heat escaping, because the bees will keep this temperature up by creating friction in the hive, and then they create a ball around the queen, and they keep her warm through the cold days. But during the summer or the spring, you can actually turn it this way to where the entrance is a little bit bigger for them. And that's when it's still kind of cold outside at nighttime, but during the daytime, they want more bees, you know, air traffic control, more bees being able to come in rather than, and you'll see like when the switch comes, they'll start clogging up right here, trying to get in and trying to get out. So this just helps them a little bit to where you have bees that are leaving and bees that are coming in with that initial first pollen. So the maple trees will, you can judge the maple tree blooms, and they have that first pollen that the bees are looking for. And the pollen is basically what the young brood, your baby bees, are going to eat.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that first pollen is the sign for the queen to start mass producing eggs. So during the winter time, there's not a lot of food, so she just kind of lays eggs here and there just to keep the colony alive. But then once that push for spring comes, she knows that the more eggs that she can have, or the more bees that you have for spring, gears up to where you're getting ready to get that honey flow. And so she wants as many bees produced within a period of time to be able to get as much honey as possible.
Okay.
And then at that point in time, when the spring flow hits, you just want to take this thing out completely. Okay, and you can kind of set it aside to where they have this full runway, and you'll see, I mean, it'll just be bees flying in and out.
Okay.
So, yeah, just judging on the different times of the year, that you can just rotate that around. And
Keep that over here.
okay. Next up, we're gonna have, so this is,
Yeah, take it out of there.
it's all put together, but this is basically just to grab onto the frames. You got a knife?
Yep.
Right out there. Very prepared.
Try. I always keep a knife on me.
There you go. So this is just basically like if you're worried about getting in and where you're going to drop a frame or something like that, you know, you can use this to pull out, and it just holds on to the frame. If you're nervous about like grabbing onto the sides, sometimes you'll have a bee that gets up underneath the ledge right here. When you're picking it up, they start crawling around everywhere. You put your fingers down underneath there, they're obviously going to sting you. So you'll get used to it, but or not.
Yeah, or not.
But this is just a grabber, just to grab the frames. So right here, okay. So this is what you want to use to scrape the wax off the frames. And so what this does, I'll show you, this actually kind of goes with this as well. So this is going to be your honey knife, or the wax knife that you want to cut the honey caps off, And so you just bring it in here, and then you're going to just basically cut it, and they'll raise the wax up to where it's past these frames.
Yeah.
And so you just cut that, and what that's going to do is open up all the cells to basically put in your spinner and spin out. Okay. So once you do that, sometimes you're going to have, it's not all going to be perfectly even. So then you can just bring this along on the areas that didn't get touched. And you just bring that and scrape it, open up the cells so you can get most of the honey out. Okay, so something else that we were doing, if you can see the smoke coming up here. So I actually had, so from those wax cappings that I was saying that you can cut off from the frames, I've actually brought some wax that we're going to coat a couple of these frames in here. So we're going to go ahead and do that real quick. And what I have here is basically like a paint roller. Yeah, if you want your frames, you want to go ahead and do them. So basically what I did was melted down some of the wax, and it's nice and hot. So, and then basically when you get these, they already got a little bit of wax on here. But we're going to put a little more wax on here just to make sure that the bees are happy with that. More wax is always better.
Yeah, like you can feel the wax build up on this whole kit. It has been like dipped in wax, but
see, and you can see that. And what'll happen is the bees will actually transfer this wax around and use it where they see fit. Now, what happens is like a lot of people, when they get this, they're like, oh, it's like they don't put more wax on here.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Let me show it here.
Yeah.
So we're not putting too much. Like we're not filling up every crevice, I guess you would say. Okay, we're just kind of lightly putting a coat on there.
Right. And so what that does is just gives the bees extra wax. Now, the thing with wax, and we get some there on the floor there. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
This is
It
a
takes,
workshop.
yeah, there you go. Nice. It takes the bees to draw out a frame of a deep frame. It takes the bees approximately 11 pounds of honey. So they got to consume 11 pounds of honey to draw out one frame.
Okay, so this one's good?
Yep.
All right.
Bring another one out.
Here, and we're just going to start, we're going to do it in
There you go.
order here.
Just do them in order there.
Yeah. So putting a little bit of extra wax on helps out.
It does. And so people will be like, when they first get these hives, what they end up doing is they don't know this trick, and they're all like, well, my bees are like building the comb off of the wax foundation rather than drawing out the cells that are on here. And it's like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, well, the bees don't necessarily like plastic, which is why some people are like, no, I don't use plastic because, you know, the bees don't like it. Well, if you know the tricks of the trade, you at least got to get the wax on there to get them started. And then that will encourage them, oh, hey, other bees have already been putting wax on here, so this is what...
so it's kind of fooling them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then they'll start to draw that out.
Was that a decent fit?
That's really good.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm not putting it on every piece perfectly. I'm just kind of sloppily, I guess, in a sense, just kind of throwing it on there to get a little bit of
there you go
wax build up. You can see where it's drying. You can see where it's. You can see it a lot clearer there.
Right. So usually your first year beekeeping, you're not looking at getting any honey.
Yeah.
You're just basically building up the colony.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to be getting into. Try to do some swarm traps, and then I got some bees that we're going to try to make queens from and get berries started over here.
Now is that the nuke? Is that a
So when we make new queens, we'll split off a portion of the bees from the colony and then make a nuke.
Okay.
And then, so then that way we'll have like frames that we can already have that are already drawn, and she already has, usually she'll already start laying in the nuke, the eggs, so that way the colony's ready to go as soon as you get it. So the other thing about this box right here, maybe, you can kind of see right here on the sides that this has actually been dipped in wax.
Yeah.
And so it actually is water, waterproof up to an extent, and then I guess the more time it stays out in the hot sun, it'll wear off kind of like a coat of paint, or some type of weathering, water resistant paint that you want to put on there. But I mean, it does help protect the wood and everything. It's amazing, that, and it has the wax smell that the bees like. So it's already going to attract them to the box.
Well, and I don't have to worry about painting this, right?
Right.
So
yep.
It's already waxed. I don't have to paint it.
So now while he's going over that and finishing that, I'm going to go over a couple of other things. We have right here, this is what I was telling you about. If the wax gets old and you need to scrape this, the wax off of the frame and start over, you basically just use this to, like a shovel, and then just scrape that wax off. You want to save that wax, basically how I did for this, that you can actually, even though it's no longer viable for the frame, you can save that wax, melt it, and then put it on the frame, put it on the frames like this, to where they can start over. And
then like you were just saying, the wax that's on the buildup on the outside of these eventually deteriorates. You could just wax it. You could just
you just wax it back on there.
Put wax right back on.
So next we'll have up here, so this is going to be a queen cage, basically what you want to capture a queen in. And so when you get into multiple hives, what you're going to realize really quickly is that the bees' ultimate goal is to make honey and then produce more hives. So they want more bees. So if you don't give them a sufficient amount of space, what happens when your family gets big and full, you need to either move or you need to downsize the space. So the bees, if the queen cannot lay a certain amount of eggs, and she's needing at least to lay about 1,500 eggs a day.
Wow.
Baby bees, once they're laid, the eggs are laid to the point in time that they hatch out, 21 days. So Langstroth, in that science, has created the 10-frame box. So basically, if you think about it, every 21 days, you have new bees hatching out. So then the queen will go back and relay eggs in the new cells that are hatched out. Now what happens during the honey flow is, and this is where the swarms come into play, what happens during the honey flow is all those extra cells that she was able to lay in get filled up with honey. It's called a thing called honey bound. So then what happens is it turns into, we don't have enough space, we need to move. So then the queen, the rest of the bees basically tell the queen that, hey, we need to leave because there's not enough space here. So what ends up happening is they create queen cells. And those new queen cells will be baby queens. And so the workers will basically tell the queen, or one way or another, something very interesting, and I'm trying to do studies on this. I've actually had a nuke, like a one-frame box, and brought a frame of eggs over. Those frame of eggs I put on that one frame, or the 10-frame box, and came back, there was no queen in there, it was just bees. And so they need like 2 to 3 day old eggs to make a queen, to make good queens, you know, because they give them more nutrients that they do the regular bees. Okay. Now the queens usually can hatch out within 16 days. and then they have like the whole mating flight that they have to go, and so about 30 days for a queen to start laying, to where she's a mated queen, and then she can start laying eggs. In that time process, when I put those eggs in the frame, the rest of the hive had honey in there, and so they were bringing in honey and everything, but they needed a queen. They knew that. So what they ended up doing was having those eggs, and instead of drawing the eggs, the cell out where the egg was laid in, I noticed that I started getting queen cells over here on these other frames. They were literally picking, and some people say that they can't do this, but I know this to be true, that they were literally taking the eggs, viable larvae, or they say larvae.
Larvae.
Larvae. It's French.
We're
Fragile.
We got
French
fancy,
bees.
fancy bees.
But they took those eggs out, or larvae, and brought them over here and put them in the queen cells over here and drew those queen cells out. I was kind of flabbergasted about that, because, and then I saw a couple of other posts, people saying, no, you probably had a queen in there, you didn't know it. I know that there was no queen in this hive.
Huh.
And it was like basically that they were queenless for like a whole week. So because I specifically removed the queen, and then removed all of any signs that there were any other queen cells in there, checked every frame front and back, and like intentionally brought in the eggs from one of my great queen producers, and put her in there, and it was a swarm that I caught, and so she just had really good genetics. So those were the genetics that I wanted, and they started putting queen cells in the other one. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
they know what they like, and they are very smart and do their own things. But this is a queen capture cage. So what happens is like if you find multiple queens in here and you need to like move it, and you don't have anything to a place to put her, you can kind of like capture her, pinch her by the wings, and you put her in here and then slide this, and she's in her queen capture cage. So this one right here is if, for beginners, I don't mark my queens anymore, just because I've killed a couple of them by marking them. The bees, it was a perfectly good queen. She was laying well, and as soon as I marked her with the non-toxic tape, they killed her.
Oh.
So I was like, what the heck?
So stop doing that.
So the mark is the little dot on the back of the queen that some people do, and then they have like for different seasons or different years, it'll be a different color. And so you can basically put them in here. This is a little foam that you put the queen in there, and then it has little holes right here that you can dab the mark on the back and then let it dry. And so I let it dry, and some hives I've had it to where the queen, they accept her, and obviously people do it and have success with it. But I've lost like, I want to say 2 or 3 colonies that way.
Really?
And so I just stopped doing it.
Okay.
And so I've gotten better. The more you do this, the more you kind of understand the queen's going to be where the eggs are. And so you can just basically, okay, the honey frames, the queen's not going to be on the honey frames. That's basically all for the workers. Okay, and then so the queen's usually going to be in the center. Now, if you got 2 boxes, you're going to have eggs in the bottom, you're going to have eggs in the middle, unless you have the queen excluder on. But usually if you have the queen excluder on, you know she's down here in the bottom box somewhere. So you kind of like roughly, now there's sometimes that I get in there that you can't find the queen. Not a big deal. As long as you're seeing like little small rice in the cells, those are going to be like your 2-day-old eggs. Once they lay down, that means it's probably a 2-day-old egg. But if they're sticking straight up, that means it's been laid within the past 24 hours.
Okay.
So you know that the queen's in there. Okay, and that's basically all you need to do is just confirm that there is a queen in there. Now, during the springtime, you want to make sure you go through that they have enough area in here, because you don't want your bees to swarm. But that's basically what they're trying to build up to. So what happens is like beginners, you don't have enough boxes to give them enough space. So then what's going to happen is you'll probably get one that swarms out if you don't add more space on top of it.
Okay.
Okay. But if that happens, I'll bring one of my boxes.
Would you
over.
go on top, or would you just get another one of these beside it?
So that's what you can do. If you intentionally want to grow your bee colony, then you can keep them in here and then just buy another box yourself and then make what they call a split. And then you just take a couple of frames from this hive right here and bring them over and then put them in that other box, and then they start a new colony.
Okay.
And it's great, just to further your beekeeping. But this will use as a queen marker if you need to mark them, and then go from there. And this right here is queen clip. One thing you do have to, these are good for like if you got a queen that's on a frame, or if you catch a swarm. The swarm is all over the place, and you find a queen, you can put her in here real quick. The only thing that I've noticed with some like virgin queens, they can get out of here because they're really small and slender.
Okay.
They haven't had they haven't been mated to where they have like the big abdomens that the mated queens will have. And so the mated queens, these are, generally speaking, for the majority of the mated queens, I have had a mated queen get out of there. But what I've done was, you can see like the pieces of plastic, they kind of rest on each other.
Yeah.
What I've done is actually taken mine and shaved down these sides right here to where they close, this will close a little bit thinner.
Okay.
Because I've had it to where I'm like, yes, got the queen, put her in here, and she's like flying around, and then all of a sudden she flies off.
So he's just talking about that small gap right there. So shaving it down just a little bit to close that gap in.
Yep. On the side, the sides where it's clamping down.
Yeah, kind of hits right here. Yeah, shaving it down.
So this right here, this is I will just go ahead and recommend you just throw this away.
Okay.
Okay, so this is beetle trap. Now you don't necessarily have to throw it away, but I've found that if you actually have the Swiffer sheets, get unscented like fabric Swiffer sheets, and put those on top of your frames. Now what that's going to do is you're going to find that there's specific beetles which they call like the hive beetles, and what they do is they smell the honey in here, and they will come in here and they will start. Now if you get a strong colony, the bees will basically corral them, push them to one area. What happens is if you have the Swiffer sheets up here, they like the dark area, but they'll come up here and then their legs will get stuck. They have barbs on their legs, and so the Swiffer sheet clings onto those, and then they can't move.
Okay.
This is same idea. It's got a slit up here, and you put like vegetable oil down in here, and it goes on your frame, and it slides right in here. And then what basically happens is the bees will push the beetles into this right here.
Get a close up, even though he's saying probably not go with this method.
And I'm going to tell you why.
I still wanted to show it. All right, so why wouldn't you use that then?
So what happens is like when you have so you kind of see if you have this filled with vegetable oil, like right here, see how easy it is to. It just stays on here, so it's easy to pop off. What the bees end up doing is gluing this down to the board, so it becomes one. So then you basically got to move this whole frame out with that on there
to be able to get that.
To be able to, and then you got to dump the oil out. Then what happens is it becomes a mess, and that oil, if it gets on the bees, it coats the bees and it kills the bees.
Okay.
So
that's a good reason why.
And so then you either got to remove this off of here to fill it back up with vegetable oil. It just becomes a mess.
Okay.
The Swiffer sheets
sound a lot easier.
You just basically put the Swiffer sheets on top,
lay them on top,
and the beetles crawl in there, and then you take the Swiffer sheet, throw that away, put a new one on.
Do you put Swiffer sheets over just a section?
You just put like one Swiffer sheet per hive, and I just probably put it in the middle, and the bees know that will trap. I think the bees know, they're pretty smart, but they will know that, hey, the beetles, once you corral them to that, they can't get free.
Okay.
Yeah, so
just like one sheet per hive.
Yeah, I was to say one sheet per hive.
And it doesn't matter if it's middle or out on the sides.
I would say unless it doesn't. But you'll notice like each hive is different, and each colony is different. So you'll notice like when you open this up, if there's beetles in there, They're going to be back over here in this corner. They're going to be up here, or you'll see where the bees are corralling them to, and that's usually where I'll end up putting the Swiffer sheet.
Okay.
So, and then lo and behold, this is your gloves. They actually come up your arm, and then they have elastic in the so that way the bees can't crawl up into your arm, which is beneficial. So you don't want them.
I've had them before.
You'd be doing the bee dance.
I've done it before. I've been working in hay and putting hay in a loft.
Yeah.
And they go up my pants.
Yep. Yeah, they can go up your pants.
Oh,
and
it's
that's
awful.
horrible.
Awful.
So these are just basically little fire starters that you can start
And they go
smoker.
in the smoker, right?
Yeah. So the thing that I've learned the cheaper way, being on the homestead, you got a lot of hay.
Yeah.
Just when it's dry out, just mow up some hay or whatever, and then I just put that in a garbage bag, and I just keep that in the garage to when, you know, because sometimes you'll get out there, like, you don't really want to get into the hive when it's been raining, but sometimes, you know, you get out there a day after and everything's just been drenched on, and then so it's wet. So dry hay, and then you can use that to start your smoker with.
Okay.
But these are good to just light these, and then just drop one in there with the hay, and it'll keep it going.
How many of these do you use at
Just
a
use
time?
a cup. Well, with the hay, you just use a couple of them.
Okay. Just
So-
a couple of them.
And it's pretty cool. This actually comes with other things that maybe can basically offer in their
I'll
setups.
do a close up on that there and over here. It's just the kit that I'd gotten.
So now this one is interesting. So the main thing that I can figure, and this is like a little tool, it's like a little spinning tool,
Little
spur on it. So this one is like for a particular type of frame that you want to use that has the wires going down.
Yeah, just hold. Yeah.
And it holds the wires. So then you basically run this along the edge. It's kind of like a screen when you're putting in the screen.
Yeah.
Along there, and you
put the
little rubber gasket.
Yeah, you push
going around it, and then it just like pushes it down in there. So if you're going that route, they just like to add extra things in there. But and then that's basically
that's
it.
not necessarily for this design.
Not for this. Yeah, not for the plastic foundations.
Okay.
So got any questions about it?
Oh, I'm sure I've got.
Oh, wait, you will once you get
Yeah,
there.
yeah. You get
Anything
into
about
it.
the setup?
No. I'm pretty happy. Oh, this one here.
The queen excluder, yeah. Bring that back over here. You'll see that.
So so you call this a queen excluder?
Right.
What's the purpose of it? How does it work?
So this is the queen excluder. So what you want to do, just like the little queen trap. Where was that little clip?
The little yellow one. You want this one?
By design. Well, no, the flip.
Oh.
Where's that at? Anyways, the spacing is
right here.
designed that.
This one here.
There you go, right here. So it's got like little rivets in here. That's the spacing that the queen can't get through. So this basically goes over the whole hive. So you keep the queen down here in the bottom. What this does is when you get into honey production, you're going to have all your frames up here. If you don't have this on here, some beekeepers are like, no, I don't like using the queen excluders for whatever reason. They say the bees traveling up through here, it rubs on their bodies, and then it can shorten the life of your bees. They do just fine with it.
Okay.
I prefer the metal ones versus the plastic ones. The plastic ones, obviously, over time are just going to break and become brittle. But that's what this is that the queen can't fit through these. A mated queen, some of the virgin queens, they may be able to fit through this. But you can lay this down. You give her own box down here. The bees quickly realize that the queen can't move up here. So then they will start to put the honey up above the queen,
Okay.
and then allow her to lay down here. Unless they become honey bound, then they will start to fill in these.
So the brood will be
yep,
down here.
Exactly.
The honey will be up here.
And what is great about this is that this is the reason why I started doing queen excluders, is because you don't got to worry about baby bees being in your honey.
That makes sense.
So when you spin that all out, you know it's either honey or going to probably be a little bit of pollen, but most of the time they will put the pollen around the baby bees.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. Once again, complete novice.
Sure.
If I'm thinking of, I want a few. I want to start with maybe a few boxes.
Right.
What you just said kind of makes sense of why I would want to choose maybe a medium or something going vertical.
Right.
So that you put the queen excluder on, your brood's down here, your honey's here.
Yep.
And you're going vertical. Whereas if I just go with another box like this sitting beside it and I'm not going vertical, then I'm dealing with the brood and the honey all together.
Yep.
And it's just more work to separate.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yep. So, and that's the other thing, you got like the horizontal hives that are basically doing this same method, but they're just coming out long ways versus stacking on top.
Okay.
Now, the reason why I like to stack on top is because if you get a really good honey flow and you could stack as many boxes on top of that one hive as long as you got a level foundation. That's why you want to make sure that the bottom is level as can be. Versus if you have a long horizontal hive, you can only go to the end of that horizontal hive, and then usually they make them probably 2-3 boxes long, to where once you're past that frame capacity, unless you have a design to where you can actually stack these boxes on top of it, but then you're having to leave the lid open.
Okay.
So that's the thing with the horizontal hives. This, I mean, I've actually seen some hives to where they can stack them 8-9 boxes tall, so during a really good flow.
So it really doesn't matter. You can just keep adding.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's just as many boxes as you feel like you want to lift, and then
I've got teenage boys.
Yeah, there you go. You got the teenage boy. Hey, get over here, move this box. So, but yeah, or if you want to split the boxes off, then you can just break them off and then put them over to the side or whatever. But yeah, literally during a really good, like it seems to be cycling around Kentucky, and that's where we're at. Probably about every 3 to 4 years, you'll get like a really good like honey flow, to where it's just like everything's blooming perfectly, the weather's perfect, and then the bees, as much room as they have, they will continue to bring that in. So that's what I'm saying. It's like if you have drawn out frames, that's gold in the bee world, because you could just keep adding more frames on there. And the great thing about it is, so when you get into spinning out honey, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like they're still packing in honey and all these frames are already capped. Take that box off and then spin it out and then put it back on. Now the problem with that is that capped honey makes more honey, and it's kind of weird to think about that philosophy, but what you can actually do is you checkerboard in new frames with the old frames, and the bees don't like empty space next to their honey, so it encourages them to fill that frame faster than to have empty honey. Like if you have a box that's completely empty that you just throw on top, then versus a box that already has like frames with honey in it. So you can take every other frame, spin it out, and then give them back to the bees, and then checkerboard in a couple of empty frames. Then they will draw that out and cap it a lot faster than what they would if it was just all completely empty frames.
So based on that, because you're talking about taking one of them out and checkerboarding them, would it be better to take, because this is a large or a deep, would it be better to have another large or deep so that they're interchangeable?
Now, see, that's where you're starting to get into, versus like, oh, I'm just going to have a single deep on the bottom
and then mediums.
And then the mediums. So that's where a lot of beekeepers have come into, like they'll at least have 2 deep boxes
Okay.
so that they can interchange those out. And then the third one or subsequent ones will be all like medium or smalls.
Okay. So lighter, easier to work with
Right.
at the top.
Yeah.
In my head, it kind of makes sense to have two larges and then 2 medium.
Right.
So that then you can interchange between those 2.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Just trying to get an idea on kind of where I'm projecting to go.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think that's going to close out this video. But as always, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Make each day count. And God bless.
All right.